Mike. There we go. That's better. Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. It is a pleasure to be with you today and see all of your faces, except for the faces I can't see who are joining us on Zoom, but we are glad you are joining us today too. It is always great to be together. As we get ready to begin our service this morning, I just want to welcome anybody who is joining us today for the first time or maybe the second time or sometime close by, to just invite them to join us for coffee and conversation after the service. It's a wonderful opportunity to get to know this community and a wonderful opportunity for us to get to know you too, if you feel open to sharing. So before we start, I'm going to invite Wendy to come forward and offer our morning announcements. Wendy, what do we got going on today?
Good morning. Well, I was going to ask about the book sale, if anybody knows. Should I say something about that? Because I guess not. Oh, great. Total sales were a little over $1,000, so that's great. Normally, I'd tell you to look at your orders of worship, but we don't have them today. We had a problem with our printer. So this coming afternoon at 11:30, Lori is going to lead a drummers circle. If you're interested, we have plenty of drums, so you're welcome to join her here in the sanctuary. Mindfulness meditation with Reverend Drew is here in the sanctuary also at 5:45 on Tuesday evenings. Can you not hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. Mindfulness meditation will be led by Reverend Drew this Tuesday evening at 5:45 in the sanctuary. And the other thing I wanted to draw your attention to was that this Saturday we have our bean supper, and at 10 a.m. people will be here preparing bag lunches. And at 3 p.m. they prepare the meals. At 4 p.m. they serve the meals. So that's happening as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. We have a lot going on, even in weeks that are not quite as full as others. There's still a lot of programming and wonderful ways to connect and be part of this community. Let us pause a moment as we prepare ourselves to move into our time of worship together. Come into the room, notice the familiar smells, the sounds, the energy, the air. And as we breathe and come into this space and find that comfortable space wherever we are seated, let us just know that each and every one of us belong here, is welcome here, just as you are.
Our chalice will be lit together, mom and child. Oh, never mind, sorry. Chalice Lighting Part 2. Lynn and Taylor will come forth and light this. This is a small reading by Sarah Getty McNeil called Autumnal Welcoming. Come in from the crisp morning air outside. Come in wearing the autumn sunlight on your face. Come carrying the turning of the seasons in your heart. Whatever and however the greatness of life is speaking to you now, you are welcome here in our circle of friends.
I now invite you to join in our opening hymn, number 16, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple." I'd now like to invite our young people to come forward and join us for our story for all ages. And let's see, is my microphone is back on. That's good. Yes, you got a question already. What is this? This is a microphone. Yeah, it's a new microphone. We're very lucky to have a new set of wireless microphones because of donations. Look at this. We've got them trained well. So today I want to tell you a story. I like to usually tell stories instead of read them to you, but I am going to read this book because I really like this. This is one of my favorite children's stories. And Ben is going to help us out here because we took pictures of the book so we can show it on the big screen so everybody can see the pictures. And it avoids me having to do that awkward turning the book around all the time. So the name of the book is The Rabbit Listened by Corey Dorafield. First slide. One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something really special. Something that was really amazing. Taylor was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, what happened? Crows knocked it all down. And things came tumbling down. The chicken was the first to notice. What a shame. I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck, cluck, cluck. But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Next came the bear. Rawr, rawr. How horrible! I bet you're feeling really angry right now. Let's shout about it. Rawr, rawr, rawr. But Taylor didn't feel like shouting, and so the bear left. The elephant knew what to do. Trumpeter, I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering either, so the elephant left. One by one they came. The hyena, let's just laugh about it. The ostrich, gulp. Let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo, tisk, tisk, what a mess. Let's just throw it all away. And the snake, shh, let's go knock down someone else's. But Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually they all left until Taylor was all alone. I wonder what's going to happen. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit, but it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together, they sat in silence until Taylor said, "Please stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide and throw everything away and to ruin someone else's. Through it all, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plan to build again. "I can't wait," Taylor said. "It's going to be amazing." Yeah. So,
Is it 3D, like is it stacked on top of each other, or is it a maze?
it's however you see it. Yeah. It's it's opening. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So what's this story about? Like something happened to Taylor, right? And what happened? People were trying to be helpful, right? But what kind of help did Taylor really need? Wow, are you studying psychotherapy or what? I mean, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. That's exactly.
A teacher, isn't that basically just what a teacher does, except they don't really listen, they're just like,
Yeah, but sometimes well, I think sometimes teachers. I think most of the time teachers listen, but sometimes they have a lot of people that they're trying to take care of all at once, and so it's hard to do that, right? But sometimes we don't need to necessarily fix what's going on. We just need to be able to sit and be, and just by being can be really, really helpful. So I'm imagining that all of your parents at some time like get a little frustrated or a little overwhelmed by what's going on in the world and whatnot. And sometimes just the fact that you are there, just the fact that you snuggle up with them, you don't need to ask questions or anything like that. Just being able to be next to somebody you love, maybe it's a brother or a sister or a friend, just being with them is actually a huge gift. So, with that, I'm going to encourage you to head downstairs I see a rabbit who's going down there now. You can all hop on down to your classes to be able to be present to each other in your Sunday morning spiritual experience. We now enter into the sacred time of our service when we open our hearts to each other and to this community to hear about the great joys and sorrows that make up the fabric of our lives. I'm lighting a candle of joy. I just got back last night from being away for a couple days to join classmates from my 8th grade class at a reunion at the Waldorf school that I attended. 40th anniversary. Some of them I've had connections with recently, but a bunch of them I haven't, and I got to see my 8th grade class teacher, who is still actively teaching out in California. But it was just so nice to be in that same place. Somehow it shrunk. I don't know. Just amazing to see the wonderful people who my classmates from back in those days are. And also holding space for 2 of my classmates who have moved on. And finally, I light one last candle for all the joys and sorrows that remain within the deep recesses of our hearts and those that are ever present just below the surface. May they find hope, may they find love, may they find connection, and may they find a nonviolent release. Please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Great universal spirit, interconnected web of which we are a part, we hold up these joys that have been expressed here in our community this morning. Hold up the joys of excitements of days and anniversaries and reconnection with loved ones and classmates. We also hold in our hearts those in our community who are recovering and have recovered from cancer and other maladies. We also hold in our hearts those who are struggling and suffering, those who have moved through some of their sorrows and struggles to actively be engaged in the important and challenging work of recovery, and those who are beginning new journeys of working with the energy that is within that sometimes struggles, makes them struggle a little bit, and finding new connections and new ways of embracing the world and seeing the world and experiencing the world. We also hold in our hearts those who have lost loved ones to suicide. Very tragic and difficult space where we don't know what we could have done and we sometimes are left second-guessing ourselves. May we pray that others find a way to reach out when they're caught up in those difficult places so that they don't never feel alone. Spirit, we embrace this time in our service as a time of deep sharing, a time of being able to bare our souls to one another, because we know that each human being tells an important story, and each human life brings great wisdom and meaning. By coming together and sharing our experiences with each other, we grow closer to each other, and we grow closer to becoming one. Blessed be. Amen. Sounds like another spirit of life. It's very energized over there somewhere. When do you want to introduce our offertory?
It is now time for the offering. We have the Share the Plate is an organization called HAM, Hemophilia Alliance of Maine, and we have a family in this church who has been impacted with that for both of their sons. So.
Give gratitude for the gifts that have been shared this morning with this beloved community to help support this beloved community and the Hemophilia Alliance of Maine. Blessed be. Amen.
I guess we are plagued by unusual noises this morning. The reading is a poem called The Longing for Something More, written by Gretchen Haley. Every little thing that breaks your heart is welcome here. We'll make a space for it, give its due time and praise, for wanting it represents the longing for something more. Some healing hope that remains not yet. We promise no magic, no making it all better, but offer only this circle of trust. This human community that remembers, though imperfectly, that sings and prays, though sometimes awkwardly. This gathering that loves, though not yet enough. We're still practicing. After all, still learning, still in need of help and partners, still becoming able to receive all this beauty, all these gifts that we each bring.
All the circle
Thank you, Molly and choir, for opening the circle up and creating the wonderful space. So, welcoming the stranger is an ethical imperative held by all of the world's great religions. It calls for us to see the value of humanity in others. It is an ethic that helps us balance our desire for predictability and familiarity with a spiritual truth that we belong to each other and value each other just in our simple being. Last week, I discussed the ethics of welcoming people to our congregation. I reminded us of the need to continue learning how to be welcoming to different people and to be greeted, or how different people like to be greeted, because welcoming is not a one-size-fits-all endeavor. I also talked about how embracing the visitor or guest and accepting and affirming open ways opens the doors to new connections and new possibilities. When a meaningful relationship is made, the results of those connections are rich and rewarding, and they lead to better understanding, knowledge, and even transformation. Remember how that simple greeting, Assalamu alaikum, opened up a door for me with a new friend. Just that simple phrase, peace be with you, opened the door to a new friendship. Today, I want to take the same concept of welcome and turn it inward, and in doing so, create a similar space of interconnection that leads to growth and wisdom. Developing this inner skill is a form of welcoming that helps us navigate the difficulties of life and explore greater possibilities. In doing this, I will be examining welcome through the lens of the Vipassana meditation school that I have been practicing for the last dozen years or so. And as we're starting to talk about welcoming from the perspective of Buddhism, as always, one of the big concepts in Buddhism that's good to begin with is a concept of impermanence. Many of us are familiar with that Buddhist concept of impermanence, which basically says that we are all part of a vast, ever-changing universe full of causes and conditions that make things happen. Because we are related to each other and to all beings, we experience the fallout of those causes and conditions as they play out their natural flow. Sometimes we have the idea of how these causes and conditions work, but more often than not, we don't understand how those forces work, and all we are left is the results, the things that have come unto being because of them. When those forces work out in our favor, we are happy and grateful. When they don't work out so well, we experience those results as pain and suffering. This is natural. The problem for us, however, is when we get stuck in the pain and suffering and continue to ruminate on it over and over again. In the busyness of our lives, especially in these times of rapid change, it is easy to get caught up in the patterns of suffering. With the never-ending news cycles that tell us of all the things that are going on in the world that are broken, the things that we have taken for granted, that they're being torn down, of books being banned, of long-standing laws that were designed to undo inequality that are being challenged and overturned, people acting out in violent ways. We see our democratic principles and processes being eroded, and we feel our mental well-being slowly being whittled away at as we see others struggling with physical and psychological health issues and noticing that there is a lack of support and services. Much of our society is under stress, the natural flow of things does not seem to be going so well, and so we take that stress on in our everyday lives. So how can we navigate these challenging times? I think Buddhist psychology offers a very valuable perspective. And the second noble truth, the teacher Buddha states that much of the suffering that we feel as human beings comes from the unseen forces of our desires and grasping. They take the form of greed, wanting to do and have all, aversion, that pushing away of unpleasant feelings that we experience, and then ignorance, not being willing to be aware of what is going on or thinking that somehow whatever is going on doesn't affect me, right? How do these traits show up in our lives? And I'm going to give you a couple examples of how I experience some of these in my everyday life. And I want to do that because I think sometimes when we hear these words out of context, they feel harsh and judgmental, right? And in the Buddhist context, they're not, right? So here's an example. Greed. Wanting to do everything. I want to do everything. I really like to be involved. I see so much injustice in the world that I want to keep grasping and hold on to being involved in every activity of working to counteract systems of oppression. In trying to do so, I become burned out. I'm distracted as my mind tries taking in the many streams of the ongoing 24/7 information flow, and sometimes I feel like I'm on top of it, but when I don't, I start judging myself and I start feeling miserable and I become really frustrated. I can't do this anymore. Am I doing enough? Aversion. Ignoring what is happening right here, right now. Saying to ourselves, well, it's not really that big deal. That shows up like, I'm too busy right now to deal with anything else. I hear myself saying that sometimes. Or dismissing the need to pay attention to something that keeps nagging at me over and over again. Like paying attention to self-care or my own limitations, right? Sometimes I push that away and ignore it. Ignorance. That feeling of I don't need to pay attention to this because it doesn't affect me directly. I don't want to learn about it or hear about other people's suffering. I don't want to understand things like inequality or racism or white supremacy culture, or how my habits might contribute to climate change or dysfunction in a relationship. We all engage in these ways of being that lead to suffering. The importance is being able to recognize these traits and not to judge ourselves by them, but more to recognize them as they are and when they arise in our daily lives, and then to develop the skills and awareness of how to work with them, to transform them into something that is useful and liberating. If we notice that we are acting out of greed, we can work on a strategy for letting go of that greed, and therefore not increasing the level of suffering that we are experiencing. This is where the rabbit comes in. In our time for all ages, we learn the skill of sitting with our deep and intense emotions and thoughts. The child creates something amazing, and through impermanence, it is destroyed. Many emotions arise, the temptations to dismiss these complex feelings that arise. The chicken wants to talk the frustration away. The bear wants to shout out. The elephant wants to fix it. The hyena wants to laugh it off. And the snake wants to go and take it out on somebody else's. That's not to say that these reactions are not appropriate. They happen, right? They come up. That's part of who we are as human beings. If we can let go of some of that suffering that comes from those life situations quickly, that's great, that's wonderful. But if we find that we are talking about them over and over again, and we keep repeating the same story, and we start yelling and snapping at people, or we laugh everything off when we face something difficult, we are often feeding the suffering by magnifying it. And I may have said this before, this is an aside. One of my teachers has this wonderful formula that suffering equals pain, which is something that occurs for all of us, right? Times resistance. The more we resist the pain, the greater the suffering. When strong emotions arise and return, they don't seem to go away, it's time to call the rabbit. To learn to just sit with those emotions without judgment, but in a caring and kind way. It's a practice of allowing or welcoming those challenging experiences. In doing so, we recognize that they are important. It's like the child who wants the attention of a parent in the grocery store, right? We've seen this. Daddy, look, I want something, or I want you to look at something with me. Daddy or mommy keep going. They're on their agenda, right? They're trying to get the shopping done, and they ignore the child. So the child starts speaking up louder and louder, and before you know it, they're throwing a tantrum in the middle of the store, and the parent's feeling embarrassed, and it's just a really difficult and awkward situation. If we pay attention to our emotions and thoughts and give them the space that they need in our lives, they don't need to throw a temper tantrum. If, on the other hand, we are welcoming to them and noticing them and say, I see you, then we reduce their power over us and we ease the suffering that they bring. When difficult thoughts and emotions continue to be clingy and don't dissipate quickly, they call for our rabbit energy of being able to allow a space for us to sit with those difficult emotions and thoughts and allow them to arise however they do. After sitting with those strong emotions, we can allow our curiosity and our desire to understand to slowly creep in. We can look at how are we experiencing the reaction to that instance in our body. Are we tight? Are we relaxed? Are we feeling like we want to bite somebody's head off? What are the underlying assumptions that are coming from behind those thoughts? Maybe I didn't do something that I wanted to do or had intended to do or whatnot. What am I saying inwardly? Am I saying, I'm a bad person because I didn't do that? I'm a bad person because I let somebody down. I'm not good at this, right? Maybe we're having a feeling of feeling frustrated or sad. Or a feeling of, I think I lost my place and I need to get back to it. Maybe I'm angry at a friend or a relative, and I want to understand something, or want them to understand something that I'm trying to tell them, but the words that I keep saying are coming out in a way that they can't hear it. Or maybe they're in a place in their life where they can't hear it. That's frustrating. And learning to welcome these thoughts and feelings, we learn about ourselves in very deep and meaningful ways. How does this level of uncomfort or discomfort show up for us? Where does it show up as stress in our lives? What is the source of the frustration? Is it triggering a story that someone told about us when we were young? Is it something that is triggering a traumatic experience that we had as an adult? What is the source of suffering? What is the need that is not being met? Sometimes in this process, we are able to, sometimes in this process, it reveals the important truths that we can use to transform our outlook, relieve stress, and clarify what we need to do to move on. It really moves down deeper into the core of what the situation is. Another aside that I just thought of this morning is that sometimes when we're doing this work, we're taught as teachers and meditators that there are some times when we are looking at some of these things, especially traumatic experiences, that are really hard for us to look at by ourselves, right? They can, if they're re-triggering us and we're trying to look at them, but we keep getting re-triggered, that's also a way of listening to ourselves and saying, I need some help. I need to reach out, a therapist or a minister or a friend. If I'm feeling down and being like I'm getting on myself because I am not doing enough, I might get to a place where I can more fully appreciate that what I am doing is helping me reach a higher level of awareness. And by calming things down, it lets me see perspective. It lets me see that, if I'm stuck trying to do the same thing over again, it helps me see a different way. The process can help me claim my curiosity. When someone calls me out and says that I'm doing something that was not helpful, I can hear what they have to say, or I can take advantage of that learning moment and see that maybe unintentionally I acted out of a place of privilege that I didn't even know existed. Instead of becoming defensive, I can sit and not get caught up in the blame and shame game of suffering and defensiveness. By befriending our thoughts and emotions and approaching them with a perspective of welcome, they become essential gifts that we can use to move below the surface. And this is where we come to that space of awareness. Where there is welcome, there is room for kindness and compassion that feeds our need to grow. Where there is welcome, there is less stress and suffering. And the stress and suffering is reduced to a place where we can deal with it. And most importantly, where there is welcome, there is space in that wide circle that our choir just sang about for transformation and growth. These are the secrets that I use to navigate the life of a minister that is often very often demanding. And I think it's a skill that others can use as well to help grow. It's not the only way. It's not the only route. Many of you have other ways of spiritual practices of journaling or other things that help you go deeper and be more present to some of those difficult things in your lives. And hopefully they find that connection that helps you grow and learn from those difficult experiences, even if it means reaching out for help from others. Because this matters. This is important. This is just as important as welcoming newcomers to our community. It's welcoming that which is who we are and who we are becoming and who we will soon become. Blessed be. Amen. Please join us in singing our closing hymn, We Would Be One. As we extinguish our Unitarian Universalist chalice flame, symbol of faith, hope, love, and connection, and the embracing all of our humanity, even those parts of us that are struggle at times, let us be reminded that although our worship has come to an end, our service to each other and to the world has just begun. You gotta blow the candle out. Blow that? Nope. I now invite you to rise in body or in spirit to sing our benediction.